Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Ryujinx, and unfortunately, Ryujinx is dead. This emulator has been terminated. So here's a statement right from someone on the Ryujinx team and right from the official Ryujinx Twitter. Yesterday, GDK-chan was contacted by Nintendo and offered an agreement to stop working on the project, remove the organization and all related assets he's in control of. While awaiting confirmation on whether he would take this agreement, the organization has been removed, so I think it's safe to say what the outcome is. To further this, if you head on over to the Ryujinx GitHub, it has been taken down. There is no more Ryujinx on GitHub at all, unless someone had forked it. So with this news, it seems that Nintendo has successfully taken down the two biggest Switch emulators out there, Yuzu and Ryujinx. Does this mean the end of Switch emulation? Probably not, because once something's on the internet, it tends to be on there forever. And there was no lawsuit against Ryujinx that we know of here. It was just taken down because Nintendo got to GDK-chan and, well, with the communications there and whatever Nintendo offered GDK-chan, it was enough to take down this emulator. Now, in my opinion, this is going to significantly slow down Switch emulation development. I mean, Nintendo got rid of Yuzu and now Ryujinx. I'm assuming some people may try to carry on with these projects as we've seen in the past, stuff like Suyu and Sudachi and others. And now probably with forks of Ryujinx as well, but at the same time here, without the main developers working on these things, the developers trying to pick this up and run with it are at a disadvantage. Now, interestingly here, during this whole announcement, the Ryujinx development team also shared some insider information as to what they were currently working on. One of those was an iOS port, and they say we had a working iOS port that ran really well. And on top of that, we talked about this one a while back, and unfortunately a number of people doubted me. They had a working Android port. They say it did have a UI, but due to driver quirks, performance accuracy, and OS issues, it was not in a releasable state. Rather than suffer support headaches in the Android emulation community, they held back until a later date. Unfortunately, it seems they have held back for too long because it's never going to be released. However, since Ryujinx was open source and there doesn't seem to be any legal action against them, I don't think the code is illegal. I could be wrong, I'm not a lawyer here. And I'm wondering if there is a chance that Ryujinx source code will be kept alive and online by people who wanted to continue working on it. In which case we may see those iOS and Android ports of it, or we may not. Unfortunately, I don't know if the Ryujinx Discord is going to stay live or if it's going to shut down too, but right now on their Discord they do have iOS and Android gameplay. And on that tweet, which I'll link in the description below, they also have Android and iOS gameplay videos. Again, I don't know how long those are going to stay up for. If you are curious and wanted to learn more about it, check out that Ryujinx tweet. There's a whole bunch of information in there. And on a side note, I'm assuming that this is going to be talked about for a while, and on YouTube there's probably going to be a whole bunch of videos talking about this very issue. Video Game Esoterica already has a video up about this whole thing, and well, he's a copyright and trademark expert, so his opinion may be worth listening to. So at the end of the day here, while I don't think this is going to kill the Switch emulation scene, I think this is going to significantly slow it down. And I am very curious to see what Nintendo's offer to GDK-chan was. I don't know if we'll ever see it, but I'm wondering if it was financial compensation to shut down the project, or was it just a big threat of a lawsuit, and that threat was big enough for GDK-chan to shut it down. Hopefully we find out, but I don't think we're going to. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about something that's pretty darn impressive and kind of crazy. We're talking about QuanDoom, which is Doom up and running on a quantum computer. I'm not joking with you. I'll drop a link to the GitHub in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. And like everything I talk about in this video, the link will be in the description below. My news is 100% open source, and I don't hide my sources. Now, it's worth pointing out that not everybody has a quantum computer, nor has access to one. I think IBM sells access for about 96 bucks a minute, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, here they have included a simulator, but you'll need 5 to 6 gigs of RAM. Now at this point in time, QuanDoom is only one level, but more can be added in the future, or if you know how to map stuff, you can make more levels for it. This is 100% free and open source. Next up, we're talking about custom Mesa Turnip drivers on Android devices. So if you've got a Snapdragon CPU with an Adreno GPU, you might be excited to know that there's new Mesa Turnip drivers available. So at the time of filming, Mesa Turnip driver version 24.3.0 revision 9v2 is the latest update. And they say here it should fix Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom crashes, and other games. I will say it probably won't fix all of the crashes, and well, your experience may vary based on the driver. These drivers work different on different devices out there, and some drivers work better for certain games and some don't. And additionally here over on Reddit, this specific version of the driver may bring back someone's father. They say here expect him to still not support Adreno 7XX though. Don't bring this up, it's still so painful for him. But moving on, and next up we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Ryujinx, and Ryujinx got a few new updates. So as of version 1.1.1402, Crosscode and Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition should no longer crash on boot when loading a shader cache. And as of version 1.403 here, it allows Trouble Magia to go in-game. Next up, we're talking about the PS5 Pro, and it appears that Sony is trying to reduce the whole scalping situation in Japan by having customers proving that they're PS4 or PS5 users before they can order one. My advice to Sony is just don't make it a limited edition. Let anyone order one of these things. So with that being said, to prove that they're PS4 or PS5 owners, players need to have been signed into a powered up PS4 or PS5 console for at least 30 hours between February 22nd, 2014 and September 19th, 2024. So if you're trying to pick this one up to get into the PS5, you never owned a PS4, good luck. However, outside of Japan, those restrictions were never put into place, and I kind of wish they were, because those PlayStation 5 Pros were scalped almost immediately. Anyways, if you wanted to get your hands on a PS5 Pro non-limited edition, it appears they are still up for pre-order. There are still pre-orders available, and people are saying that this is a bad sign for the PS5 Pro. People are saying that since all the pre-orders didn't sell out, the PS5 Pro is not necessarily going to be that much of a success. Now let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Do you think the PS5 Pro is going to be successful? Do you think it's dead on arrival? And are you interested in picking one up for a whopping $700? I think that price point is still a hot topic. I think this just means that there's going to be a whole lot of PS5 Pros available, and maybe you won't have to resort to scalping or picking one up from a scalper in the event that you really wanted one. Having them available to me is just a good thing. I mean, I'd like to see this more often with other consoles out there when they initially launch. And speaking about initially launching, next up here we're talking about something that is probably never going to have an initial launch, and that would be a classic Tekken collection. Harada says, well, these games haven't aged that well and no one is interested in them. So in an interview over on The Gamer, Harada and Michael Murray allude to the fact that 3D fighting games have not aged as well as 2D sprite-based games. And they say here in regards to some of the older Tekken games, when you see it later on, it doesn't look nearly as impressive as it used to. And Michael Murray flat out says he wouldn't even see himself picking up Tekken 3 and playing against friends for an extended period of time. Now, I would agree with that, but also disagree with that at the exact same time. I mean, yes, you could argue the 3D models haven't held up well at all over the years. And if someone has never played those games and is only used to the newer generation of games and goes back, they would say those graphics are awful. But for those of us who grew up with those games, take for example, I don't know, Banjo-Kazooie or Perfect Dark or GoldenEye, or any of the old Tekken games, well, those models still kind of hit home as absolutely acceptable. And I do like those old Tekken games, and I think people who grew up with those games would be interested in them. But I don't know if that's enough people to justify these games being released again. Let me know your thoughts about that one in the comments below. Do you think the older Tekken games are strong enough to bring in a brand new audience? Next up, we're talking about PSN. Now, at the time of filming, I believe PSN is being restored for all users. If it's not, let me know in the comments below. But earlier on, it was being reported that the PlayStation Network is down for some players. And I think some people are starting to realize the importance of not requiring a PSN account to play certain games. So VGC confirmed that there were issues, and until the situation is remedied, affected users are left unable to play games online, access the PlayStation Store, and this is the big one, or verify the licenses for digital games, thus rendering them unplayable in some circumstances. Now, just the other day, I was reading comments from people wondering why requiring PSN accounts for something like God of War Ragnarok on PC was such a big deal. Now, with this happening, I'm hoping they're starting to reconsider that viewpoint and maybe understand why PSN accounts could be problematic in certain situations, especially where they don't really need to be there, arguably. Moving on, and we're talking about one of my favorite Linux distributions, Linux Mint. In December, it's reported that Linux Mint 22.1 will be releasing, and as part of that release, they're including Cinnamon version 6.4. Cinnamon desktop environment here is receiving a whole bunch of visual improvements, including rewritten dialog boxes and even more, like this force close dialog box. Now, in my opinion, I'm liking these visual updates to Cinnamon. It's making it look a lot more modern. If you use Cinnamon, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. And speaking about my favorite Linux distributions, next up here we're talking about the makers of one of my favorite Linux distributions, and that's SteamOS. And yeah, we're talking about Steam. So Steam is having their turn-based RPG Fest, which goes now until October 7th. So if you are a fan of some turn-based RPGs, there are some very good deals on Steam right now. For example, Octopath Traveler 2 at 40% off. Sea of Stars at 30% off, Dragon Quest XI at 50% off. Surprisingly, Baldur's Gate 3 is not a part of this sale. If you've picked up anything in this sale, if there's a game on sale that you want to highlight for other people, let me know in the comments below. Moving on, and we're shifting from Steam to Epic and talking about Epic versus Samsung. So the other day, Epic launched a lawsuit against Samsung for the One UI 6.1.1 auto blocker feature. For those who may not be aware, Auto Blocker automatically blocks apps from being sideloaded, and this is on top of Google's or Android's auto block feature that's enabled by default anyway. So it's kind of like a two-step process on Samsung devices that use One UI 6.1.1. Now for full transparency, and I'm pretty sure you can align with me on this one, for the average user, not for power users, for the average user, for security reasons, I can completely understand why Android disables sideloading apps by default. It's a pretty simple process to change this to enable sideloading, and if you can't figure it out, you probably shouldn't be sideloading apps. That's just my 2 cents there. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. But this whole One UI's auto blocker feature on top of that is a bit of an annoyance. But this is where things get interesting here. In the lawsuit, Epic alleges that the auto blocker was intentionally crafted in coordination with Google to preemptively undermine the ruling in Epic's court case against Google for app sideloading. Epic thus made Google a party to the suit. Now, Michelle Rahman on Twitter asks, just to clarify, are you saying that Google did not have anything to do with Samsung making the auto blocker feature enabled by default? Your original post used the word create, which is why I'm asking. And Dave Kleidermacher, who is the head of Android Security and Privacy, says correct. We didn't request that Samsung turn on the auto blocker by default either. So Google had no hand in this whatsoever. Now, I'm kind of surprised about this one because you'd think Epic would have done their homework before launching a lawsuit against Google. Google of all companies, who has billions upon billions of dollars, maybe even trillions. Anyways, I don't know what's going on here. This is crazy to me if this is actually the case. Why wouldn't they have done their homework first and maybe just gone after Samsung if Google had nothing to do with it? That kind of takes away from the whole merit of the entire case. So who knows what's going to happen here, but I think Google's automatically blocking of sideloading apps by default is good enough. I don't know why there needs to be a secondary thing that Samsung is implementing here. But moving on from that, and next up here, we're talking about the Smurfs Dreams. Now, when this game was announced a while back, we talked about it, and I couldn't believe how much this game reminded me of a Super Mario game, and I couldn't believe how good the gameplay actually looked. Good enough to make me possibly want to check out this game, which is crazy. It's the Smurfs. Anyways, here, this game has just released a brand new demo on Steam, and I'm probably going to be checking this one out. Let me know your thoughts about this gameplay. Does it look good enough for you to want to check out if you're not interested at all in the Smurfs? But moving on, and we're shifting from fantasy to reality, or rather simulation. And if you're a fan of racing simulations, if you're a fan of Assetto Corsa, you might be excited to hear about Assetto Corsa Evo. They've announced this game and it will be hitting early access on January 16th of 2025. I hate to say it, January 16th is just around the corner. We're already in October. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I mean, Assetto Corsa has been out for a while. It's a very popular game, and I'm excited to see it being updated. Now, if you look at the trailer, one of the things that people seem to be most excited about is free roam. I mean, if I pause it right here, I can see traffic. The game's Steam page is up. There is no price information, but it is available to add to your wish list. And if you wanted to check out a previous entry in the series, Assetto Corsa Competizone is currently 70% off. And speaking about announcements, gameplays, and trailers, next up here we're talking about Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. And if you're excited about this game, IGN has just posted 13 minutes of gameplay. It shows you what the game's going to look like. It shows you what combat's going to look like. And I think it looks incredibly awesome. Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is set to release on February 27th, 2025, if all goes according to plan. This game is up for pre-purchase on Steam and also on PlayStation, and this footage is from a PS5. Next up is a friendly heads up if you're a fan of The Simpsons Tapped Out on mobile. If you are a fan of this game, you're probably not going to be a fan of it much longer here because EA has announced it is shutting this game down. So as of the end of this month, at the end of October here, October 31st, you won't be able to download the game anymore. And if you've already got it on your device, as of January 24th, 2025, they are shutting the servers down, so you won't be able to play it. The Simpsons Tapped Out is free to play here with in-app purchases. It's got over 10 million downloads and a 3.9 star review. If you've played this game, if you're currently playing this game, let me know your thoughts about it shutting down in the comments below. In my opinion, this is one of the big problems with not owning games. It's one of the big problems with these free-to-play games as well that have in-app purchases, because after they shut the service down, all of that money, in my opinion, has gone to waste because you can no longer access what you bought. And speaking about free-to-play stuff, next up here we're talking about PubG Mobile, and this is very interesting. PubG Mobile and Tekken 8 have announced a brand new collaboration. I don't know how this fits, but at the same time here, whatever, I guess. Let me know your thoughts about this one. I'm kind of, I don't know how I feel about this one. I guess it's cool, but at the same time here, PubG Mobile is free to play. And you know my personal opinions about spending money in a free-to-play game. Next up, we're talking about the upcoming Hunter x Hunter fighting game called Nen X Impact. And they've just announced that they've delayed this game to implement rollback netcode. So this announcement comes right from their website, and they say the release timing changes from 2024 to 2025. They apologize for the trouble caused in the delay so they can implement rollback netcode for release. Moving on, and next up we're talking about qBittorrent. For those who may be unaware, this is a free and open source file sharing program. And qBittorrent just got a brand new update to version 5.0.0. On top of a whole bunch of improvements and bug fixes, they've added in a brand new dark theme. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo 64 emulation with RMG. RMG stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Rosalie's Mutant GUI, depending on how you want to interpret that. And RMG just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, version 0.6.6 is the latest update here. There's a whole bunch of fixes, and they've also updated Glide N64, Mupen 64 Plus Core, and more. And if you use Rosalie's Mutant GUI, this is the first update since July. Moving on, and we're talking about Xbox 360 emulation with Xenia Manager. Now, for those who may not be aware, Xenia Manager is a front end for Xenia. It basically works with Xenia to make things easier to use and install and basically configure. And Xenia Manager just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Xenia Manager version 1.15.0 is the latest update. And this one's a big one. The developer says this is the last major version of Xenia Manager v1. Expect only bug fixes moving forwards, as I'm currently in the process of doing a complete rewrite of Xenia Manager for version 2.0.0. So as for what's new here, they've added an update patch option which allows the user to update the patch, but do note that it will reset settings when it updates to the latest versions. And they say here Xenia Manager now tracks the playtime, and it will show you the playtime when you hover on the box art. So while this is a pretty big update, I am very curious to see what version 2 of Xenia Manager is going to look like. And I don't want to say it's overshadowing this update, but it kind of is. I mean, stuff like this to me is exciting. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. I thought people might be upset about the Ryujinx news today, so she's here to hopefully cheer some people up. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.